What else could we be doing for this person? We also need to talk about water safety in our ISP teams. We want to respect an individual's privacy as much as possible. However, for most individuals with seizure activity, to be tub bathing or to be, in a hot tub unattended is just plain not safe. There may be some rare exceptions to this, but keep in mind those are pretty rare exceptions, and for the most part, when someone who has active seizures is bathing and they're using a tub bath as opposed to a shower, there should be someone with an arm's length at all times. It doesn't take long to have a seizure, slip under the water, and get a lung full of water. And safety just needs to be on everybody's mind at all times. Let's see, some individuals that are higher functioning, the ISP team may say these seizures are so rare and their need for privacy is so high that we've weighed the pros and cons and they can be in a bathroom. Certainly, I believe the door should be unlocked. Maybe someone should be listening carefully in the hall for a sudden sound or anything. But there are some risks that need to be weighed very seriously by the ISP team. Should they be using blow dryers, electric razors in the bathroom near water? What needs to be in place for that individual? When they're swimming, they should have flotation devices or one-on-one supervision, and that's someone right next to them ready to grab them if they should go under the water. When this individual is out in the community, in using community transportation or bicycling or even in a wheelchair, there's a lot of issues that can be addressed. Safety belts in wheelchairs. Individuals certainly will be at greater risk falling out of their wheelchair than having the seizure safely strapped in their wheelchair. Wheelchairs need to be secured safely in transportation at all times for all individuals. Helmets should be used for bikers, and often a three-wheeled bike works a lot better for an individual than a two-wheel. So if you lose some balance there, you still have some protection from a serious injury. Also, bike routes can be adjusted to be out of traffic areas and in safer areas whenever possible. When a person is riding on public transportation, you might want to discuss what can be done there. Perhaps you need to alert, if it's the regular bus driver, a city bus driver, to their situation so that he responds appropriately should a seizure occur. Some discussion on further issues such as mealtime, if the individual is involved in cooking, what's safe for the individual if they cook for themselves. We recommend a microwave for cooking. Next in line would be an electric stove. Most dangerous would be a gas stove because of the flame if they fell forward. All can be relatively risky, so you need to weigh the risks there with the team. For hot objects, a commuter cup with a lid is going to prevent more burns than a coffee mug or a cocoa mug with an open top. Chairs with side arms are much safer for an individual to sit in to prevent falls to the floor, some of the time, not all of the time. If your individual smokes, they should never be alone. You might want to check into using a smoking apron so that no ashes or cigarettes accidentally get dropped on their lap and cause a burn. Let's talk about what to do during a seizure. During a normal seizure, stay with the person. If they're about to fall, guide them gently to the floor to prevent and guide them. I'm sorry, let me read that over. Stay with the person and guide them gently away from or prevent access to dangers. That sounds pretty big and vague, but what it means is if you're crossing the street with them, you're going to want to get them out of the street. If they're falling near a dangerous area, if you can just guide them a little bit to the side into a safer area, that's going to be far better for them. Move objects away from the person, not the person away from the object. If they're in water, certainly keep their head above water. I think that goes without saying. But when we're talking about moving objects away from the person, there might be a time when you can't. If I fall and have a seizure and I'm jerking my arm and it's repeatedly hitting an object like the refrigerator, there's not much of a place you can move the refrigerator. But you can put a pad or a pillow or a coat or anything that's handy between my arm and the refrigerator so I don't repeatedly hit it on such a hard object. If needed, if I'm thumping my head on the floor with a seizure, you can put a pad under my head, arms, or legs. Do not restrain the individual. Do not put anything in their mouth. Time the seizure. It's very important to get the length of the seizure so that you know if this is a normal time length seizure for them or if it isn't. And I know it's very difficult to time seizures. When a seizure occurs, I'm probably the first person in the room to look at my watch. However, I promptly forget exactly what it said. So often we have to go with kind of a, oh, I looked at my watch and it felt kind of like a minute. And everybody understands that, but you need to be responsible and get as close a time frame as you possibly can. If you're in a surrounding with other individuals, explain to bystanders that this is a normal happening for this individual and that they're going to be fine. However, if it's not a normal occurrence and you need some help, don't hesitate to enlist someone to call 911 for you or do whatever you need. Most seizures last under 2 minutes. Some people routinely have longer seizures, and their doctors may help you with parameters on, what's a dangerous time frame for this individual. We'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about calling 911. The person may become combative or disoriented after seizures. Do whatever you can to just reorient them and provide safety for them. Sometimes it's just waiting out, reassuring the individual. Some individuals may be incontinent with seizures. So, if you're heading out to the movie or to dinner, you want to make sure that you've got an extra pair of clothing in the vehicle for them so that they can, be changed quickly if they're in a setting where that can happen. Otherwise, they may need to go back to the home setting to have that happen. We need to protect their privacy as much as possible and their dignity, and to be aware that when they have a seizure, afterward, when they're coming out of a long seizure, such as a tonic-clonic, called also grand mal, they may have a little bit of amnesia. They may not remember what they were doing just before the seizure. So you may need to remind them, hey, Susie, we were just getting ready to go into the movie. Let me know when you feel ready and we'll go ahead and continue. But don't rush them. Don't offer food or fluid to the person right away after a seizure. Give them plenty of time to recover. You may have an individual protocol for the person that will talk about the length of seizure, the normal time seizure, and when the physician wants you to be concerned. After the seizure, if they have fallen down and they appear to have secretions in their mouth, it's a good idea to turn them on the side so that these secretions can be drained. Loosen any clothing around their neck. Most of our individuals aren't the shirt and tie kind of guys, but if they have tight clothing around their neck, be sure to loosen that so they can breathe well. Reassure them, support them, document what happened with the seizure, and allow sufficient time for recovery before returning them to any activities. Let's talk about when to call 911. That's always on our mind with a seizure. Is it normal? Is it going to be longer? What am I going to need to do? Some general guidelines, and now these are going to be different for the individual you serve based on what's normal for that individual. But generally speaking, when a seizure lasts more than 5 minutes, unless their seizure protocol or the doctor has said otherwise, that George is just fine with 7-minute seizures, that's what he has, he recovers fine. But generally speaking, when a seizure lasts more than 5 minutes, you're going to be wanting to call 911. If the person has 2 or more seizures in a row without full recovery of consciousness between seizures, when breathing doesn't resume after a seizure, you will of course start CPR and call 911. Reference back to your CPR training. You'll want to call 911 when it's the person's first seizure. If a person had, we're told maybe you had heard they had a seizure in their childhood, but hadn't had any since, I would consider that a first seizure. If they're not taking medication for it, I would be calling 911. You'll also want to call 911 when the person may have taken water into their lungs. Perhaps they were bathing at the time of the seizure. Even though you were there to pull them up right away, it's still a good idea to call 911, or certainly when they've been swimming. Epilepsy, sadly enough, does have some life-threatening outcomes, and we've seen it happen in the state with the individuals that we serve frequently. Often the seizure doesn't stop. That leads to lack of oxygen, acidosis in the bloodstream, high fever, cardiac arrest, and death. Even when the person survives a serious seizure episode, further brain damage may result. Also, we have problems with the person falling, causing a serious injury that can lead to death. And even if the person survives again, brain damage, bone deformities may occur. If the person aspirates some fluid, when they're in the tub, swimming, hot tubbing, that can lead to a pneumonia, which can lead to death. And again, the potential for further brain damage, and then in this case, lung damage also. Thank you for going through this segment on seizures with us. One of the Fatal Four. We wish you well in caring for the individuals that you serve.